Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy, and I am a life coach for the widowed. I had a whole bunch of ideas pop into my head, especially over the weekend, and I didn't write a single one down. So I'm going to tell you what I've been up to lately. I've been recording, I've been guesting on a lot of podcasts lately. I will put the links in the comments. Some of them have not aired yet, so I don't have links for them. But the ones that have aired, I will give you the links for. I love doing them. I even did a summit, but it was in the same format as when I do the podcasts. And while some of them may seem the same, there may be the same questions, and of course I give the same answers because that's the answer, right? But I every coach or every podcast host asks at least one question that's different, that maybe I wasn't even expecting. And I love that because I have the answer for everything. And if I don't know, I can genuinely speak from the heart about most questions regarding being a widow or widower, about the different stages of grief, about how long grief lasts. There's no answer for that. About what friends and family can do for someone who's grieving. That's one of my favorite topics to talk about. How the griever, how the widowed can come to terms with their grief, learn to live with it, and move forward with their life. That's what I do. I help them to come to terms with it. I help them to learn how to live with it. I help them to find out who they are and what their passions are, because they'll change. Just as they change from when you were a child to when you were a teenager to when you were a young adult to when you were middle aged, if you've gotten that far. Your your passions, your purpose, they all change as well. For many of us, our purpose was to be a wife or a husband. That was top. That was priority, as it should be. And then the next, real close, sometimes overlapping, is to be a parent, right? We are supposed to put our marriage ahead of our children if it's a good, healthy marriage. And we need to work to make it that way. And then the children come. And when they see the good, healthy marriage that we have, it will give them the baseline for their marriage. They'll decide to emulate it, whether it's a decision or whether it just comes naturally. Just like when you are a child or a teenager and your parent says or does something that you think is really stupid, and you promise yourself that you're never going to say that or do that. And then, you're a parent yourself and you end up saying and doing the same things. I swore to myself I would never tell my kids, because your mother, and that's what I say. And I say that. It's what goes. And it's not that way, especially when you've got 6 boys. Sometimes the fastest and easiest answer, the one that gets through to them the most, is because I'm your mother and I said so. Then when things calm down, later on when you've got the time and the energy and they'll actually sit and listen to you, then you can do your explanation of, why. But sometimes there just isn't an answer. It's just a gut feeling. Like, you know, why can't I go to this party with this friend? Because I don't trust that friend. I just have a gut feeling. I know he hasn't done anything wrong yet, or she, but there's just a gut feeling. And as a mom, I have to go with my gut feeling. Those kind of things you end up seeing and doing as you're a parent that you never thought you would. The same thing goes for marriage. When you're a child, I mean, I know girls will play wedding. I know I did. We had this blue and white towel that I thought was just so pretty, and that was the veil. And then we'd have somebody stand in for the groom because no boy in the neighborhood ever wanted to. I wonder why. And we were too busy playing with the GI Joes and the little green army men. But so we do a pretend wedding, and the party after we'd have, little finger sandwiches and whatever we could round up from our parents' kitchens that they allowed us to have. And we'd play wedding, but that's as far as it got. I mean, there was no marriage involved because we didn't know really what marriage was all about. And as a teenager, you maybe start noticing your parents' marriage. You may notice that they fight a lot, or they don't fight at all. That they have good days and they have bad days, or they make every day seem perfect for them, or they make every day seem horrible. So we form ideas and opinions on what we want our marriage to look like, especially as we grow older and get into the dating scene and start getting to know the opposite sex or same sex, getting to know the the person, the people that we can maybe envision ourselves being with for long term or life, and or the ones we definitely would not. He's fun for a few dates, but it's definitely nothing permanent. My first boyfriend was like that. And then we do get married. We do get married at some point, and we go about life, the way we envisioned it, and we try to make it that way. They say marriage takes work, so sometimes you have to put in some. You definitely have to put in some effort. You can't automatically expect the other person to have the exact same idea of marriage as you do. You know, is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? Sometimes it's 40-60. Is it the man goes out and earns a living and takes care of the cars and the lawn and all of that, while the wife stays at home and cooks and cleans and takes care of the children? That's the way it was when I grew up. That's the way it pretty much was after I got married. But he had no problem with me working. It was whatever I wanted to do, we'd make it work. So I did stay home with the kids for a long time. And then I needed to talk to people about more than just diapers and bottles and nap times. I needed adult conversation. So I got, the kids Most of them were in school. My husband changed his work schedule to accommodate me working. I went to work part time where I could say I'll only work these days or I'll only work these times. So that worked out for quite a while. And then it got to full time. And luckily, by that time, all my children were in school. So that worked. Then came along number 6. And he he never went to a babysitter. His babysitter was generally his 14-year-old brother. Um, if my husband was working at the same time, we generally didn't work at the same time, but he worked nights, so he had to sleep at some point. But again, there was a 14 and a 12-year-old in the house, and they could help. I started babysitting when I was 11. But, I felt better about it because my husband was in the house with them. And then we found out I could work from home. My children were teenagers, and I think teenagers actually need a parental presence as much, if not more, than the young ones do, the formative years. I think a lot of their formative years are in the teens. They need somebody to come home and talk about their day with. They need somebody to watch over what they're watching on TV, what video games they're playing, who they're hanging out with, get to know their friends and who they're hanging out with. Those were the kind of things that I felt, and luckily I was blessed. My husband agreed. He had had the same kind of upbringing as I did. He came from a large family, so he understood and he agreed with whatever decision I made, which was wonderful. I was blessed with him. So I knew all of how to do that kind of thing. And then I went to work. When I was working from home, I got into management. I worked long days. Whoever thinks working from home means working less is crazy, because when you work from home, you're always at work. But it was enjoyable work. I liked the people I was working with and working for. Work was what I did when life got a little too busy, a little too hard sometimes. And it was what I leaned on after he died. I leaned on my job because I didn't know how to live without him. So luckily my youngest he was just going into his senior year in high school when his dad died. So it wasn't that, I had little ones that I had to take care of. But my office door, while it was closed all the time, it was always open. He could come in and talk to me at any time. And he did. And he had a very good best friend, and he was close to him and his mom and his sister. He was very close with the entire family. And they welcomed him with open arms. And that was a blessing while Dan was sick. And then, I've been talking for a while now. But I didn't know how to be a widow. Are there certain things I should be doing? Are there certain things I should not be doing? How do I handle all these overwhelming feelings that I'm having? How do I get used to being without him in the house or anywhere? We often slept at different times because he worked nights, needs sleep off and on during the day. Even on his days off, he had a hard time sleeping through the night. But you get used to it. You do it something for 20 years, you kind of get into a routine. But it was, and then he retired, and it was like I got my husband back again. I got the man I married back again. He he laughed and he was friendly and he was much more relaxed than when he was working. He had a difficult job and he really didn't like it the last 10 years of his life. So, but he stuck with it because of the family. He did it for us. So I tried to make life as easy as I could for him, and because he was providing the life that my children and I wanted and needed. So I was kind of used to him either not being home or sleeping, but there were times we used to go for drives. Sunday was our day. Sunday was our date day. We'd usually get up kind of early. Well, it depends. Some Sundays we get up early and we go for a drive for a while and then stop someplace for brunch or breakfast even. Um, he liked the buffet places, and for brunch, I liked them too. That was I enjoyed that wide variety. So we'd stop and then we drive some more, and sometimes we'd stop at a grocery store we had the exact same one back at home, but because we'd driven 3 hours, he felt he needed to do something. So we went grocery shopping. Or he loved going to cemeteries and looking at the old headstones and taking pictures of the headstones. Well, I liked cemeteries because of the flowers and the peace. And I would take pictures like up from underneath of the trees. I don't know where they all are now. I wish I could find them because some of them were really beautiful. But we'd like similar things. We like driving through small towns or even small cities where there was just pretty much a main street. And of course, there were things offshooting it, but that main street would tell you so much about what living in that area was like. I remember we went in one town, we saw a tattoo parlor, and the name of it was Sorry Mom, which I thought was hilarious. I still think it's hilarious. Not everybody does. But it's hard to get used to being without your person. And he was my person. Even when I was mad at him, even when I didn't like him so much, he was my person. He was the one I went to when I had problems, when I had worries, when I had something wonderful to share, when I was happy, when I was sad. He was my person. And I'm sure many of you felt that way about your spouse. Either your wife was your person, or your long-term partner. They were your person, and it's really hard to figure out how to live without them. And I didn't have anybody to tell me how. My mother was a widow, but I didn't really talk to her much about being a widow. We just didn't talk. She did recommend a couple books that she had read that she found helpful, but I tried one of them and I couldn't get past like the first chapter. It just wasn't speaking to me for some reason. So I felt so alone. I was, even though my kids were grown, I was a youngish age. I was 54 when he died. And I didn't know other widows. Or the ones I did know were like 70 or 80. And I didn't feel that we really had that much in common other than the fact that we were widows. So I kind of plodded along. all by myself, and didn't do a very good job of it because I didn't talk about it to anyone, really. I mean, I would say, "Oh, I miss your dad," or I would say to some, I would talk about him. I use a memory and mention, when I was talking to other people, almost every conversation I had involved him in some way, but it didn't involve what I felt, what I was going through. And that's a support system I didn't know I needed. I didn't know it existed. I didn't even know what support system was. And I thought, well, you know, everybody gets through this, so I'll get through it. And I pretty much did. But about 5 to 7 years after, I started feeling really um, edgy. I didn't know. I The company I was working for that I loved so much went out of business, and it was difficult to find work at home positions. I tried to find other positions, but none of them would pay me what I had been making, and I should have taken some, but I didn't. Um, so I ended up. I still worked online for a few companies, but it was dwindling. The work wasn't. It wasn't what I had been doing. It was more production type, and I was managing people up to that point, and this was just straight typing, and not really what I felt was my forte. The forte is other people, and so that didn't. I was unhappy in my job situation, but I there was more than that. There was just an inner feeling of, what do I do now? Who am I really? Who do I want to be? I tried art classes. I joined an art club only to find out that really I suck at even drawing stick figures. Who knew? I did, but I tried it anyway. I tried volunteer work. I was unable to stand on my feet for medical reasons. I had a lot of pain and stuff. So I was unable to stand on my feet for more than, say, 5 minutes at a time. And that made some volunteer work, do the stuff I wanted to do, the stuff that I was excited about doing. It made it difficult. I was able to do some, but it just didn't speak to me. The volunteer work was not what I wanted for me, I guess. I was helping not people. I was helping others to help people, I guess. So it was a needed positions, but it just wasn't right. I tried, what else did I try? Even tried out for a play. And then, of course, COVID hit like the week they were supposed to announce who got what roles. I don't think I got it anyway, but you never know, right? So I can always pretend that I got it. It was the female lead in On Golden Pond. Yeah, Katharine Hepburn. Nobody can match up to her. But anyway, I tried a bunch of different things. I got very, very involved in my church, which was that helped a lot because my faith was strong to begin with, and getting involved in my church strengthened that already strong faith. It gave me reasons for my faith, and it was wonderful. But it still didn't feel right. Not that alone. It just wasn't right. And I finally, surprisingly, I was looking online for to you know, life purpose. What's my purpose? That's what I kept saying. What's my purpose? I'm not a wife anymore. I'm not really needed as a mother. What's my purpose? Why am I still here? So I Googled life purpose. Well, a lot of stuff came up, but the one that really intrigued me was life purpose coach. So I clicked on the link, and it was a link to a school who taught you to be a life purpose coach for other people. And I thought, I want this for me. So I tried it. It wasn't cheap, but I thought, let's give it a shot. So I tried it, and not only did I learn a lot, I found out that I already knew a lot that I could apply to this. It was, for me, it was common sense. Some stuff I'd done all my life, which would not necessarily be someone else's common sense because they hadn't done those things. They hadn't had the same experiences and whatever. So I thought, okay, now I'm a life purpose coach. What do I do with that? I went on to take a happiness coach certification and a group coach certification. So I got all this. What am I going to do with it? Well, come to find out, a mentor of mine recommended um, a membership course, how to start a membership. And I thought, okay, I'm not sure what this will look like, but I'll give it a try. And I learned a lot about online teaching, online courses, classes. I learned a lot in that very expensive course. It was 16 weeks long, I think. Might have been even longer, not 100% sure, but it was a long one. And a lot of it was implementation, which, you know, is that's where I suffer the most, is actually doing the thing I'm learning about. So you had to kind of do it in order to make sense of the next lesson. So then I was a membership coach and a life purpose coach. And I thought, okay, how do I do this? Well, the membership still hasn't happened. And I'm not 100% sure it's going to, and that's okay. I have worked with some wonderful women who just needed someone, partly someone to talk to, but also partly someone who'd been through what they're going through, to let them know that they're not alone. Let them know that life continues. There is life after death. You know, for those of us that are left behind, we and I could use my experiences, the things that I had learned, the things that I had learned in the courses that I took, the things that I learned by researching them, the things I learned by being involved in other Facebook groups for widows and widowers. I was able to use all of this knowledge along with empathy, which is different from sympathy, with empathy to help these other women through the most difficult time in their life. And it felt good. It felt right. And that's my new purpose, is just helping other men and women through the most difficult time of their life. To being their support system, to just to help them, to let them know they're not alone. Nothing makes grief go away. There's no expiration date on grief. I've said it many times. You just learn how to manage it so it doesn't hurt quite so much. And life throws you curveballs every once in a while, and it comes back bubbling up, but not always. And sometimes at the anniversary of their death. Some years it's fine. Some years I'm okay with it. I can talk about it, or I can ignore it. If nobody else brings it up, I'm certainly not going to. That kind of thing. But I can talk about it too, and it's okay. Other months, I just want to crawl in a hole and die. I just want to curl up in a ball and just stay that way, at least through that day. So who knows? I never know which one's going to happen. But the further it's been, I think the better it's been. I think of him every day. I probably talk about him every day. But it's in good ways. It's not so much of the suffering he went through. It's not so much about the illness itself. It was about the man who went through the illness. It was about the man who closed his eyes one last time. It was about the man who was a father and a husband, a son, a brother, an uncle, who was loved by coworkers. In the end, he was a school bus driver, and his students loved him. He was loved by his nursing staff in the hospital. He was a good man, and I'm sure your husband was too. And sometimes it's hard to remember that. Sometimes we feel guilty. Maybe the last couple of years weren't so good. Or maybe the bad years outweighed the good, but you stuck it through. You got to dig sometimes for the good. And my husband was not perfect by any means. But we'll get into that another time. But he loved me, and he loved our sons. And he always did what he thought was best for everyone. And I'll always be grateful that I had him in my life. And I'm grateful that I've learned something from his death. And that I'm able to share what I've learned with you. Okay, this didn't go the way I expected it to go, but it went a pretty good way, I think. And I'd like to thank you all for listening. I wish you had been here. I'm not seeing any comments. No, I didn't tell you I was going to do this at 3 o'clock like I'm supposed to. So this was Monday morning coffee break in the afternoon. And I thank you all for joining me. And I hope you have a wonderful first week of March. And I will see you next Monday at 3 o'clock Eastern. Same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks for listening. If you if you're watching a replay of this, please leave a hashtag replay with your takeaways from if anything hit home for you. Or you have any questions. Questions are always good. I will answer every question that I get, that I see. Sometimes I don't see them for a week or two for some reason. Facebook likes to hide them on me. But I've been chattering away for over 30 minutes now, so have a great one. Bye-bye.